Welcome back to Old School Sports and a very special episode of our OOTP 23 playthrough of the Kansas City Royals. This episode marks our 100th episode of this playthrough, which we started about 5 months ago at the end of April. Pretty crazy that we've done 100 episodes. Very much appreciate everyone who has watched, commented, liked, disliked the videos, subscribe to the channel. Really appreciate all the interaction with people and appreciate your interest in this tiny little corner of YouTube where we have been doing these Sims for about a year and a half now. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, would really appreciate it if you do. And as I mentioned, it's a little shocking that there's 100 videos of these Kansas City Royals out there now. Makes me think that I probably could have done something somewhat more productive with my time over these past 5 months, but I've definitely enjoyed it. And as I said, definitely enjoy all the interaction with everyone who watches these videos. So thanks so much for taking the time to watch this. It's been a good season for the Royals so far. You can see we've got a .615 winning percentage, best in the American League. We're up 4.5 games on the Twins and 5.5 on the Guardians in the AL Central as we try for back-to-back World Series championships. We're in a pretty heated race right now with the Nationals, the Cubs, and the Padres for the best record in baseball. So that's definitely one of our big goals over this final 2 months of the season here on August 1st. Couple issues for the Royals, and we've talked about these a lot in previous episodes. Dealing with some significant injuries, Bobby Witt Jr., who was certainly playing at a MVP type of level before he had a bicep strain about a month ago, still out for another week. Ben Borgman missed most of the season. Then we had him do a couple, or actually 3 rehab starts in Omaha before he got hurt again. He's now recovered from that injury, still on the IL for 3 days, and then we'll rehab him again. The issue now is that he's wrecked physically, which is not optimal for a 33-year-old who we owe a lot of money to this year and then potentially for the next 2 seasons. But he's definitely earned that money. He's coming off a Cy Young Award winning season and a World Series championship last year. You can see over the course of his Royals career, he's been a pretty effective pitcher with us, putting up a 1.42 ERA plus and a 76 FIP minus, 3.12 Sierra, and a 17.1 WAR over parts of 5 seasons. Really only 3 full seasons to still put up those numbers, because this season with the Royals is obviously going to end up being 7 or 8 starts most likely. And then in 2031, when we picked him up at the trade deadline, pitched only 68 2/3 innings for us. So the full seasons with us, he's put up a 3.6, a 4.2, and a 6.8 WAR. So hopefully he can still be very effective, and hopefully we will be able to manage through his wrecked injury proneness over these next couple of seasons. But will certainly be a boost for our pitching staff to get him back. Hopefully would hope by mid to late August. 3 days left, as I mentioned, till we can send him on that rehab assignment. And then I'd guess we're probably going to want him to get 2 or 3 starts down in AAA before bringing him back up. So hopefully the return of Borgman and Bobby Witt Jr. over the next few weeks will ensure that the Royals can remain in first place and hopefully lock up the AL Central, hopefully lock up the best record in the American League, and hopefully lock up the best record in baseball. Really didn't do too much at the trade deadline, which was yesterday. The only thing we did do is we added in Reed Goleman, who we actually had traded away when he was a relatively young and up-and-coming pitcher. We traded him to the Yankees. Actually, we traded him to the Mariners at the time. for Julio Rodriguez, who helped us win a World Series championship in 2027. You can see he subsequently ended up with the Yankees, and we traded for him yesterday. Hopefully he can help our bullpen over the final couple months of the season and give our team a bit of a boost as we try to hold off both the Twins and the Guardians in the AL Central. And not great news, as it seems like Bobby Witt Jr.'s strained biceps still giving him some problems, so he's not going to be back as quick as we had hoped. You can see his injury time left is unknown, so it's only August 3rd, so we've got plenty of time to get hopefully Borgman and Witt Jr. back and healthy and playing some meaningful games before the postseason. The goal, obviously, over these last couple months of the season, as we talked about, is to win the division and hopefully have as good a record as possible to ensure home field advantage for as long as possible. But it's also to make sure that both Borgman and Witt Jr., who are arguably our top pitcher and our top everyday player, are both healthy for the playoffs and that we don't suffer any other significant injuries down the stretch of the season. And not long after I mentioned we don't want any more injuries, Arrighetto Laziosi, starting second baseman, going to be out 4 to 5 weeks with a torn hamstring. He missed a lot of time earlier this season. He's fragile physically, even though he's only 26 years old, and he's had a really rough year. Played just 48 games and hitting just a .198, only one home run. He's one of the really good young infielders that we have on this team, but the injuries are becoming a big issue with him, and certainly, have to wonder about his long-term role on this team. Willie Flores, who we've had playing and starting at third base since Bobby Witt Jr. went down with an injury, is also a very good and versatile player. He's been more of a utility guy for us until this season, when he's been starting pretty regularly, in part because of those injuries to Laziosi and then more recently Bobby Witt Jr. But he may ultimately become an even more important player for us if Laziosi just isn't able to stay healthy. Although, to be fair, Flores is also fragile physically, but going to have to put Laziosi onto the injured list right now and bring up a little bit of help from the minor leagues. Obviously would feel better about things if Bobby Witt Jr. was back, but you can see his injury is still unknown. So infield is definitely going to be weak for the time being. We're going to have Fonseca at short, Flores at third, Ojeda and Alvarado, but mostly Ojeda at first. And I would think that potentially Alvarado may slide in as our second baseman for the next 4 to 5 weeks, although Billy Dominguez certainly in the mix, and we will be looking to find a little bit of talent from AAA that can also potentially help us. And we're going to be a little boring and bring up the 35-year-old Jorge Diaz, who's split the last few years between Omaha and Kansas City, mostly, as you can see, down in Omaha. Been some organizational depth for us, but he can play first, second, and third, as well as left and right. Don't anticipate that he's going to be getting any regular playing time. I need to put him on the 40-man roster, so that's going to mean that we'll need to make some kind of move here with some of these guys at the bottom of our 40-man. But I think that he can potentially be a bench player for us. As I mentioned, I believe that hopefully Alvarado will play at second base. I may force him to do that if that's not what Bobby Crosby wants to do, and then that will leave us with Billy Dominguez and Diaz as our utility infielders until we get Bobby Witt Jr. and Arrighetto Laziosi back. And we made it to August 14th, so midway through August, and the Royals have been playing really well this month. You can see 8-2 over our last 10, and we've expanded our lead to 8 over the Twins and 13 over the Guardians. now have the best winning percentage in baseball. It looks like the best record in baseball by 3 games over the Nationals. So it's been an excellent start to the month of August for these Royals. Do have some bad news coming our way, though. Just got an alert that Jose Garces, who's wrecked physically, suffered a serious injury. It's going to take a couple days for the assessment to come back, but this wasn't even an email. This was kind of a pop-up. Generally, when I've gotten that pop-up before, a lot of times it can mean that their career is over. We did not make a long-term commitment to Garces. We signed him for $5 million this year as a free agent, and we have a team option for next year at $5 million. So if he did suffer a career-ending injury, and I think at the very least it's going to be a season-ending injury, it won't cost us too much to move on from him after this season if he doesn't just retire. And we are getting close, hopefully, to having Ben Borgman back. So although Garces unlikely given his 1.69 ERA over 37 and a third innings, very unlikely that Garces would have been the guy that we would have gotten rid of to open up a spot on the team for Borgman. But if it does turn out that that injury is pretty serious and he's gone, Borgman has pitched 2 more games down in Omaha. You can see he went 73 pitches 3 days ago and is getting close to being ready for the majors, hopefully. You can see, though, he hasn't done a lot of innings pitched in those 5 starts. We've been working him up slowly. We've got him set on an 80 pitch count right now for his next start. And quite honestly, given that he's wrecked physically, I think I might keep him at 80 to 90 pitches even when he's back in the majors. And then if we can kind of baby him through the remainder of this season, maybe let the training wheels off a little bit in the playoffs and let him, perhaps get up to 100 pitches before we yank him. And good news in that Bobby Witt Jr. ready to come off of the IL also. You can see from his injury history, it's been back at the end of June since he was hurt. So it's been a month and a half at this point. So we're actually going to give him a few games down in AAA just to make sure to shake the rust off before we bring him back. Obviously, his chance at winning the league MVP this season is out after missing the past month and a half. But 324 batting average with 21 homers and 296 at bats. He's put up a brilliant 175 OPS plus and 173 WRC plus this season with a 5.1 WAR through the 78 games that he's played. So hopefully we'll get another 30 some odd games out of him over the rest of the season and have him fresh and healthy for the playoffs. And we still don't have official word on Garces' injury, but Borgman last pitched 5 days ago, so he's going to be ready to pitch again. And I think we're going to move him to the major league roster. So we're going to put Garces on the 15-day IL. Again, I'm thinking it's going to be a lot more serious than that when we do hear what's going on with his injury. That'll allow us to move Borgman back onto the major league roster. As I mentioned, going to keep him on a very tight 80 pitch count and an aggressive tiredness hook. Hopefully do everything we can to keep him as healthy as possible. Should absolutely help our rotation the rest of the way. Hopefully it'll allow us to get Bryce Hubbard out of that follower role, which I don't like, being an old school cranky guy. But that lets us go with Borgman, Lagerwell, Chavira, Hillman, and Bosma. So we've got our top 4 pitchers back and really the rotation we've had for most of this season. So hopefully if we can keep this team healthy the rest of the way as far as the pitching staff, we'll have the guys that we want on the mound when we do get to the playoffs. And as anticipated, we do have Jose Garces' injury diagnosis, torn rotator cuff that is seeming to be a career-ending injury. So normally when you get the pop-up for the injury, you know that it's not good news, and Garces is going to retire. So I guess theoretically that will save us the $500,000 that we would have had to buy out his contract next year. So bummer that his career is over, especially because he was pitching really well for us this year, and we need all the help in the bullpen that we can get if we're going to be able to repeat as champions. So a little bummed out that he won't be able to help us in that quest to win the title, but we knew he was a physical risk when we picked him up, which is part of the reason we only did a one-year contract with a team option for that second season. And one little piece of housekeeping we did as we're getting ready for the playoffs, we did just move Garces to the 60-day IL from the 15-day IL, and that opened up one spot on our 40-man roster where we moved Carter Binns, the veteran catcher who's playing in Omaha for us. Just wanted to have a third catcher on the 40-man roster when it comes time for who's eligible for the playoff rosters. Wanted to ensure that we had a third catcher on the 40-man in case Aguiar or Bolden or both of them suffer injuries when it comes playoff time. And Bobby Witt Jr. has now played 3 games down in Omaha, 4 for 9, so a .444 batting average, has walked 3 times, has struck out 4 times in those 9 at-bats. But I think hopefully he's shaken the rust off and is through his rehab assignment. So we are going to be bringing him back on to the Major League roster. Which means that we're going to send Jorge Diaz back down to AAA. Actually, I believe we'll have to waive and DFA him. No, I guess we can demote him. So Bobby Witt Jr. back likely means that I would have to think that means that Flores is going to move to second base. Witt Jr. will clearly take his position at third back, and it probably means Alvarado moves out of the starting lineup. Let's see what Bobby Crosby thinks. Yep, that's exactly what it is. Alvarado and Dominguez are now our bench players, and Bobby Witt Jr. back at third base, and Willie Flores moves to second base, where he'll be filling in for the injured Laziosi for the next several weeks. And our excellent rookie first baseman, Jonathan Ojeda, just won the Player of the Week, .321 average with 5 homers and 7 ribbies for the year. You can see 39 homers and 93 runs driven in, .241 batting average. Possible that we'll have back-to-back Rookies of the Year with the strong season that Ojeda is having. You may remember that last season our excellent young outfielder Victor Avellar won the Rookie of the Year with 42 homers and an AL Best 135 runs driven in. Not quite as productive this year, but still has put up a 107 OPS plus, .264 batting average, 23 homers and 86 ribbies. So not going to be quite as productive as he was as a rookie, but looks like he's got a chance at 30 homers and 100 ribbies before this season is over. And apparently I may have jinxed myself talking about Victor Avellar. Hamstring soreness going to have an impact on him for a week. Minimal impact on hitting, but moderate impact on running. Given that at this point we've got a 7-game lead on the Twins and 11.5 on the Guardians, by far the best record in the American League. Still in a battle with the Nationals for the best record in baseball, only up 1.5 games on them. But we've got good players down in AAA. We're going to put Avellar on the 10-day injured list just to ensure that doesn't turn into a longer-term injury, and that will actually allow us to bring up, Actually, it won't allow us to bring up it will allow us to bring up Rodolfo Falcone, who we had sent down earlier. He hit 287 in Kansas City. He was one of our starting outfielders as the season began. Eventually, Mike Mcneil, another youngster, took over that role from the 24-year-old Falcone. You can see we've had him working on his ability to play first base down there, even though he's kind of more an outfielder. So we will not force start him anymore, and we will put his position back to a left fielder, which is kind of his natural position. But we will bring Falcone up to the majors, probably permanently at this point, because it's August 23rd. So by the time Avelar is ready to come off of the IL, roster expansion will have occurred and we'll have room for both of them. So hopefully can get a few extra at-bats at the major league level for Falcone, although you can see right now he is still a backup. Javi Medina, our Rule 5 acquisition, who is just, I think, going to go down as one of the great Rule 5 pickups at all time. We had talked when we first picked him up at the beginning of this year that we'd probably have him down in AAA and possibly AA next year to get him kind of fully developed. But he's developed pretty well at the major league level, hitting 290 and 297 at-bats. So he's probably just on the major league roster for the foreseeable future at this point. And then Mike Mcneil, who I mentioned earlier, hitting much better in this attempt at the major leagues. Hit a .175 at the end of the season last year after a brilliant season in Omaha. Ended up caught up in a numbers game this year, but he still hit incredibly at Omaha before we did bring him up. And now hitting .309 with 10 homers and 27 runs batted in and 110 at-bats. So we've got a lot of good young talent on this team that hopefully will enable us to keep the best record in baseball here over the final month or so of the season. And we've made it to August 30th, but some bad news. Willie Flores banged up day-to-day with a thigh muscle strain and going to have a minimal impact on his running. Not the worst news, but Ben Borgman banged up again. Pending notice on this injury from him. Hopefully it will not be something too serious. You can see we've gotten only 5 starts out of him at the major league level this year. Only a 1-0 record with a 3.65 ERA. So he's been reasonably effective while he's pitched for us. It's just that he hasn't pitched for us too much. And given that he's now wrecked physically and potentially going to have another injury, our only hope is that it's a relatively short one and that we'll have him potentially back and ready for the playoffs for us. And it's not great news on Borgman. Strained forearm, out for 4 weeks. So we're going to have a first-round bye in the playoffs unless something really crazy happens. So he should be back and fine for the playoffs. But keeping him healthy is getting to be a huge struggle. And who knows exactly what we'll get from him if he doesn't get back in time to pitch at least one game at the major league level before the end of the regular season, which, given a 4-week injury, I think is pretty unlikely. It's going to be right on the borderline. It's August 31st. Last game of the regular season is the 26th in Detroit. So unless he gets healthier a little earlier than expected, he's probably going to be going right from the injured list into a starting role in the playoffs, which isn't optimal, but that's the situation we're dealing with at this point with him, unfortunately. And the injury to Borgman is going to allow us to bring up one of the top young pitchers in our system, Dan Keogh, who was our second-round pick back in 2028. You can see he's almost 25 years old. Been a long run through the minor leagues for him. He's been okay this year in AAA, 4.45 ERA over 157 and 2/3 innings with a 9-6 record. Has a very good changeup and curveball, an acceptable fastball. So his stuff is pretty good. His control is solid. His movement is not great, and he doesn't throw all that hard, so he's given up 26 homers in AAA this year. It looks like that's going to be his potential issue, but at the very least, the injury to Borgman will give us an opportunity to see what Keogh can do at the major league level, and given how banged up Borgman is at this point, it may be sooner rather than later that we're going to have to worry about seeing what Keogh can do for us every day. And we're actually not going to go with this follower nonsense with Bryce Hubbard that Bobby Crosby wants to do. We are going to actually force Keogh into a starting pitcher role, and hopefully that will guarantee that Crosby will put him into the 5 spot in our rotation. It actually guarantees that Keogh's going to be in the number 1 spot in our rotation. So yeah, we're going to have to make all of these other starters, force them into starting roles over the over the rest of the season, since Borgman is probably gone for the year. But if we force all of them into starting roles also, then at least that should push Keogh down to, I would guess, the number 5 spot in our rotation, behind even Tyler Bosma. But we'll see what Crosby thinks when all 5 of those pitchers are being forced to be starters. Yeah, Lagerwell is now the ace, Chavera, Hillman, Bosma, and then Keogh. So a little better there. So with an injury comes an opportunity for us to see what Dan Keogh can do at the major league level, because we could be losing Bosma after this year. We've only got Hillman for 1 more season after this year, and now Borgman's injury issues could have a pretty significant impact on his availability for next season and into the future also. So good that we'll get to see what the rookie Keogh can do over this last month of the season in the rotation for these Royals. And we made it to September 1st and September roster expansion. On the pitching side, we brought Andrew Bonds back up. He had been up with the team for a good chunk of time. 26-year-old got caught up in the numbers game because he was actually pretty effective with a 3 ERA in 21 innings pitched. Has not been quite as good as at Omaha, but we will bring him back to the majors, and hopefully he can help us down the stretch. And we are going to allow another one of our brilliant young corner outfielders to make his major league debut. Jorge Lebron, 23-year-old, who was a second-round draft pick in 2030. Split this year between AA and AAA. AA hit 358 with 21 homers and 316 at-bats. Moved him up to Omaha about a month ago. He's hit 269 with 3 homers and 119 at-bats. So not quite as good in Omaha. Still has a little bit of development to go. But like his speed, stealing, and base running, probably going to be a left-handed pinch hitter off the bench for us, and a potential pinch runner. I don't think he's going to be getting a ton of action right now, but with the likes of Vasquez, Medina, Falcone, Mcneil, and now Jorge Lebron, still have tons of options at corner outfield for this team for the next several years. Eventually, we're probably going to want to trade away some of these players for some more versatile talent, maybe add some pitchers to the team that can help us. But for the time being, the Royals are going to be hopefully a bit of a murderer's row. We'll see what the lineup looks like with the addition of LeBron to the team. As I said, I don't think he'll be starting for us. Actually, he will be. Hey, that sounds great. He's going to be playing every day, batting first and playing right field against right-handed pitchers. And he's actually going to be batting first and playing right field against left-handed pitchers. So I'm glad that Crosby wants to give him some playing time. We'll see what he can do at this major league level. Another day, another injury for the Royals. Closer Felipe Tejada, who we traded for last offseason, has had a nice year for us. 2.32 ERA, 4-3 record, 33 saves. Out with a dead arm for 1 week. We're not going to mess around. We're just going to put him right on the 15-day IL. Hopefully can ensure that he'll be healthy for the playoffs. He should be back and healthy, obviously midway through September when he can come back. So hopefully he'll get 4 or 5 appearances down the stretch of the year and be as good as he's ever been when it gets to playoff time. And Victor Avelar, last year's AL Rookie of the Year, ready to come off of the IL. Unfortunately for Rodolfo Falcone, that means he's caught up in the numbers game and he's going to go back down despite a 308 batting average in 201 at-bats in his rookie year at the major league level. Can't send Javi Medina down because he's our Rule 5 guy. Alex Vasquez is our starting left fielder. Angelo Velasquez starting center fielder. And then the young corner outfielders, Mike Mcneil and Jorge LeBron, both hitting real well. Mcneil 301 batting average, 13 homers, and LeBron hitting 364 in 11 at-bats over his first 2 games at the major league level. So we still want to see what he can do. So Falcone just caught in a numbers game for us at this point, but want to get Avelar back on the team. Will be interesting to see. I would think he has to go into the lineup based on what he's accomplished for us. I would think that probably means that LeBron gets less playing time, but yeah, LeBron is completely out of the starting lineup, which makes sense. As good as he is and as much as we like him, he's not as accomplished a hitter as Avelar, who, as I mentioned, was the AL Rookie of the Year last year. So hopefully we can still get LeBron some at-bats at the major league level over these final few weeks of the season, but they're not going to be as regular as they were before Avelar got healthy. And some more good news. Arigato Laziosi ready to come back. We'll see if he can get his batting average off of the interstate for the season over these last few weeks of the season. Unfortunately, that means that Billy Dominguez is going to be headed back to AAA. He's been a pretty useful utility guy for us this year with all the injuries. You can see not an everyday player. Played in 53 games, 32 of them starts, but has hit 304 over 138 at-bats, and certainly profiles as a pretty useful utility infielder. Most teams would be happy to have a guy like him as a 5th or 6th infielder, but with these stacked Royals, he just doesn't really have a big-time role on the team at this point. But certainly with the fact that Laziosi and Flores are both pretty injury-prone, valuable player for us to have around in the coming seasons, most likely. And it is kind of interesting. Just had Bobby Crosby update the rosters, and it looks like he's given the second base job to Willie Flores, who's having a nice year and has been healthier. So Laziosi and Rich Alvarado are now our utility infielders. And as I talked about earlier, Jorge LeBron is now kind of the backup outfielder for us. So hopefully we'll still get Laziosi some at-bats over these final weeks of the season, and as I mentioned, would still love to get that batting average at least up over 200 for the year, but definitely a difficult year for Arigato Laziosi, and he's a player who has kind of regressed over the course of his major league career. Hit .313 as a rookie, .258 last year, and as we were just talking about, is at a .198 here on September 5th of his third season in the majors. And we've now simmed ahead to September 10th. You can see the good news is the Royals are still in first place. You can't actually see this, but we did clinch a playoff berth 2 days ago. The not so good news is that the Twins have closed the gap on us to just 2.5 games. You can see they're 10-0 over their last 10, and they've won 13 in a row. We've got the best record in baseball, but they have the second best record in baseball at this point. So the crazy thing about this season is that it seems pretty likely at this point that the team with the second best record in baseball is going to have to play in a wild card series. So going to be real important that over these final couple weeks of the season that we can hopefully hold off the Twins. Taking a look at the Royals' schedule, we've got 3 games with the Twins coming up this week at home, and that's kind of our last shot at them this season. So given that they've won 13 in a row, if they sweep the series from us, they'll actually be ahead of us in the AL Central. So hopefully we can take at least 2 out of 3 at home, stop their long winning streak, and kind of stabilize our position as the team most likely to win the AL Central this year. And we'll quickly try to sim through this series against the Twins. Hopefully, as I mentioned, we can stop their long winning streak and take at least 2 out of 3. And we did get a 6-2 win here today, so that was important. I'm assuming these are just scouting reports because we have been kind of updating our scouting on some of our key players. Would like to get another win today and really get closer to putting a stranglehold on the AL Central. And we do get the win, so now hopefully we can get the sweep today against the Twins, and we did. So that's huge. They were playing some great baseball, had really closed the gap on us. But now you can see our lead is up to 6. And now they actually lost on Monday, which was an off day for us before the series started. So definitely have stabilized things. They still do have the second best record in baseball, but we now have a 6-game lead with 12 games to go this season. So hopefully over these last 12 games, last couple weeks of the season, we can clinch the AL Central shortly, clinch the best record in baseball, and start trying to position our team to be as healthy as possible for when the playoffs do get started. And we're now heading into the final 9 games of the season. The lead on the Twins is down to 5 as they've won 2 in a row. We lost a couple in a row to Cleveland. Good news, though, we do have our closer, Felipe Tejada, ready to come back onto the Major League roster. So we'll figure out who to send down to open up a space for him. And then after that, we know we're not getting Garces back. Kin Omasako not getting back out for 3 to 4 months. Question is whether we'll be able to get Ben Borgman one final start, kind of a rehab start at the major league level from that strained forearm in the last day or 2 of the season. So no more injuries, and hopefully a start for Borgman in our one of our final games is what we're looking to do over the next week and a half, in addition to obviously hopefully clinching the AL Central shortly, as well as the best record in baseball. Just little things like that. And we've simmed ahead a few more games. Magic number down to 1, so just about to clinch the AL Central. And given that the Twins also have by half a game the best record the second best record in baseball over the Nationals, I think if we clinch the AL Central, that'll also mean that we'll clinch home field advantage throughout the playoffs, which will be great. Jonathan Ojeda, our number one draft pick last season, looks like he's going to lead the American League. He's got a 5 home run lead, 50 homer season here as a rookie, even though he's hit just 236. And he's going to probably end up second in the American League in runs batted in. So last year we had a Rookie of the Year who led the AL in runs batted in Victor Avelar. This year we're likely going to have a Rookie of the Year who's going to lead the American League in home runs, Jonathan Ojeda. And you can see Caleb Lagerwell, third in the league in ERA at this point. Eddie Chavera and Bryce Hillman, two relatively recent additions to our pitching staff, likely to finish second in the American League in wins. One slightly bad piece of news, though, speaking of our longtime excellent starter, Caleb Lagerwell, is he's now day-to-day with shoulder inflammation for the next week. So we are not going to mess around. We are just going to bench him for the next week, which will take us through the end of the regular season. So his season's going to end with a 15-7 record, that 3.15 ERA that we mentioned, over 188 and 2/3 innings pitched, 137 ERA plus, and an 83 FIP minus. But we're just not going to mess around at this point. Want to make sure that he is as healthy as possible by the time we get to the playoffs. And the Royals are the division champions, so good news there. You can see 102 and 56 records, so 4 games left. We've got a 5-game lead on the Twins. So we are going to have an American League Central title, which will mark pretty good run for us in the American League Central. Yeah, you can see we have won it now. 9 of the last 10 seasons we've won the American League Central, so it's been a really good run here for Kansas City basically throughout this entire playthrough, but certainly over the last decade when we've become a perennial champion in the AL Central, and we're going to have home field advantage for the playoffs, which is great. So now our goal is, you can see Borgman out with that strained forearm for one more day. The hope is we can get him on to the major league roster hopefully tomorrow and get a game from him before the season is over. We're probably only going to put him on like a pitch count of 50 pitches or something against Detroit, and then hopefully have him ready to roll come playoff time, but would be good if we can get Borgman a start in these final few games, just so he won't be tuning himself up in a playoff matchup. And to make space for Ben Borgman, we're actually going to send Dan Keogh back down. He started for us yesterday. You can see he only went 50 innings. So his season was over anyways. Wasn't going to start again over these past few games. You can see definitely was a struggle for him at the major league level. 1-1 record, but had a 9 ERA over the 15 innings he pitched. Did strike out 20 batters, but as we talked about, our concern with his mediocre movement and mediocre velocity is going to be giving up home runs, and he gave up 6 home runs in his first 15 innings pitched at the major league level. So, the hope is that Keogh eventually can develop into a good starting pitcher for us, but I do think that lack of movement and the fact that he doesn't throw the ball all that hard is going to be a potential issue for him over the course of his career. So we will see what happens with him eventually, but right now want to hopefully get Borgman a start over these last few games of the year to, as I mentioned earlier, get him hopefully as ready as he can be for the playoffs. And we've made it to game 162, and we are ready to give Borgman the ball in this final game of the season. Obviously, we've clinched everything that we need to clinch at this point, but you can see we have lost 3 in a row on the road at Arizona and then home against Detroit. So although we're going to have a few days off for the wild card series, it would still be nice to kind of go out in the regular season with a win. So although Borgman unlikely to be involved in the decision since he's only going to pitch 50 or so pitches, still would be nice to get a win for the Royals here on the final day of the season. Obviously, he could be involved in a loss if he only had the 50 pitches. But looks like we got a 4-1 victory to end the season on a high note. Borgman only went 2 2/3, gave up 5 hits and an earned run, did do the 51 pitches, so kind of right what we were looking for him. We got a lot of pitchers from the bullpen, some action here, which is probably not the worst thing in the world since we're going to be off for next 3 or 4 days as we are waiting for the playoffs to begin. Taking a look at the final standings from this season, 103-59, best record in baseball, won the American League Central by 3 games over the Twins, who finished with the second best record in baseball. Jonathan Ojeda did end up leading the AL in home runs as a rookie, second in runs batted in. Caleb Lagerwell ended up second in the league in ERA. Eddie Chavera third in wins. So some pretty good seasons by the Royals. Taking a look at the bigger team stats, been a while since we checked in on these. 2 months ago, the Royals were first in the American League in runs and first in the American League in runs allowed. So we had the best offense and the best pitching in baseball, or in the American League, with 2 months to go in the season. Did we kind of maintain those lofty ratings? And you can see runs scored, we did end up first. Runs allowed, though, we slipped to second. So was not a incredible season where we had the best offense and the best pitching in the American League, but the best offense with the second best pitching is still pretty good. You can see had a pretty solid season. We're 500 in March, and then with the exceptions of June and July, we had over a 600 winning percentage in every other month. 709 in August, 636 in September. So despite losing 3 in a row before the final game of the season, we're playing pretty good baseball as we get ready for the 2035 playoffs and a chance to defend our World Series championship. And we will check in on our ability to do that in our next episode. Until then, thanks so much for watching, and hope you have a great day.